The Infinite Tabs podcast is brought to you by The Joy Revival, a community created to inspire you to choose joy.
Each week, we'll bring you 2 episodes, one dedicated to how we believe that Jesus is the source of our hope and our joy. Another episode is dedicated to all the things, the good, the bad, and the dumpster fires.
But in the midst of it all, we can still choose joy. Hello and welcome to Dumpster Fire Friday.
Woohoo!
Woo!
Sorry,
Yep.
I'm so excited. Not even going to let you keep
so
talking.
Excited. Well, Stacy, let's tell them what we're going to be talking about. That oh so wonderful narrative shift.
Oh, yes. This is going to be a fun one.
For sure.
Yeah. I think we should start with this. Everything that Hollywood, the elite government officials, the media tells you, just believe the opposite and know that you're walking in truth.
That's it. That's all we have for you today. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Yep. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review before you go.
Wrap it up. Okay. Seriously, though, it's actually that simple. It really is. Drew and I say this all the time. Anytime the media is pushing something, whatever the topic is, whatever that story is, whatever the headline is, we go, I'm on that team. Over here, I'm on the other side because I don't believe anything that you're telling me. And if you're putting my attention on this, I should be putting it on something else.
Yes.
The first thing that I'm going to put that attention on is Jesus. But the second thing is what you're trying to hide, because they're a bunch of liars. And yeah.
Well, the funny thing is that when I was preparing for today and I put Hollywood in there, I didn't even know what was taking place because I don't pay attention to what's going on.
Neither do I.
And apparently, something happened today in Hollywood that people really care about.
And apparently it was a really big deal.
Apparently it sounded like he got slapped in the face real hard.
And apparently I've never been on live television before, but apparently sometimes I don't watch I don't watch the news because I'm a kid, and apparently Grandpa just gives me a remote after we watch the Powerball.
And apparently now I know that the Oscars were on because I didn't even know they were on. So apparently what they were trying to do worked. Give them relevance again, because Hollywood is not relevant anymore.
They're not. And the funny thing about all of the stuff that happened with literally in less than 24 hours ago, you also are listening to this on Friday. So this would have taken place on Sunday night. So you'll be hearing it 5 days later, but we're recording it on Monday. So this just happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so interesting just how everything was playing out. And I feel like I'm so awake to the nonsense that I'm like, okay, you have this extraordinarily entitled actor that walks up on stage and slaps the host in the middle of this quote unquote prestigious event that only, you only get invited if you're one of the cool kids, because if you're not, you're just going to serve us on the side. And it's just interesting to me. I'm like, where would this ever be allowed to take place where someone gets to interrupt the speaker, punch him in the face, and then curse him out in the middle of this event?
Exactly.
And let's just talk about entitlement.
Yeah. And I want to play something for you because girl, this girl is fire and she's just so articulate. And I'm going to play it.
Everyone and their mama obviously has thoughts on Chris Rock and Will Smith from the Oscars yesterday, but the Academy does not condone violence of any form. Yes, you do. And yes, you did. You absolutely condoned it. If this had been anywhere else, any other professional setting, 3 things would have happened. Number 1, the police would have been called. Yeah, he slapped him. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it's battery in front of witnesses. Like, you can't avoid that. Number two, if this had been any other professional setting, Will Smith would have been escorted from the room and not allowed to re-enter. Number three, somebody would have attended immediately to Chris Rock. Do you need first aid, medical? Do you want to file a police report? But no, the Academy said the show must go on. So they allowed Will Smith to take his seat, enjoy the rest of the show, and get an award. The Academy literally gave Roman Polanski an award when he was hiding out in another country, avoiding SA charges in the States. No one condones violence like Hollywood, and nobody sweeps it under the rug better than they do.
God,
Fire. Absolute fire.
unbelievable.
Keep going.
I
Keep
know.
going.
Yeah, so you have to ask yourself two things. Was it just to bring relevance back to Hollywood because nobody cares? Or what are we trying to switch? Oh, I know. Hold on. Wait a minute. The president of the United States of America just created his own dumpster fire by basically threatening another leader of another country. Oh, also, he also said that we have food shortages. Bring in Will Smith. Everybody, back it up. Back it up. We got to get everybody. Can't pay attention to. Do not pay attention to the man behind the curtain, everyone.
Oh, yes. Bingo. Ding, 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 ding. That's exactly it.
The irony of this whole thing is that these are actors acting on a stage.
Mhm.
Isn't it ironic?
Don't you think? A little too ironic.
So herein lies just a great example of the narrative shift, which we were not planning on, but hey, it helps prove our point even more. So I have a question. Has anyone noticed after the dumpster fire that happened in Canada and the truckers and the Freedom Convoy that the narrative around COVID switched right after? And what happened to the United States trucker convoy? Anybody?
Crickets.
Dead silence.
Crickets.
So I don't know what that was all about. It's kind of irritating that the US can't continue in on that. But whatever. Hey, thanks, Canada, because by them pushing back, as soon as the people stood up and put pressure on them, what it did was it signaled to the governments, okay, they're not scared anymore. They've reached their breaking point. So now it's time to roll out the red carpet for the next scare tactic that we have. So I want to read to you all some science-based research that I did on fear and control. This is going to be really interesting. Okay. So collective fear is likely to produce an authoritarian mentality, desire for a strong leader, strict discipline, punitiveness, intolerance, xenophobia, and less democracy, according to the regality theory, which is a theory that seeks to explain certain cultural differences based on perceived collective danger and fear. People will show a psychological preference for a strong leader and strict discipline if they live in a society full of conflict and danger. My gosh.
What a concept.
So historically, this effect has been exploited by political entrepreneurs in many countries for purposes such as increasing support for an I can't say that word. You say it.
For an authoritarian government.
Thank you. Avoiding forget it. I'm done. I'm out. Who wrote this? I knew I was going to have a problem with that one. I didn't know I was going to have a problem with authoritarian.
To be honest with you, when I read this, I'm like, there's no way Stacey's getting through this in one or two tries. It's going to take a minute.
Okay. Avoiding democratization. Say that 3 times. Or preparing the population for war.
Pum, 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 pum. That's me shooting guts. What? Anyway. I'm going to share with you a little bit about classical conditioning. So, also known as Pavlovian conditioning, which is learning through the association of a neutral stimulus with a biologically potent stimulus. Now, I know we're going to be using a lot of big words. Okay.
Don't worry. I'll break them down for you.
Okay. And Stacy is our script writer. She will put together what we are going to be sharing on the podcast. And interestingly enough, this dear friend of mine wrote this script. And as I'm reading it, I started laughing because she started talking about this specific classical conditioning moment in time. And I'm like, what? I literally was just talking about this and researching this the other day, talking to Kobe about it. So it just was one of those things where we were like, the Lord just has us in alignment, and it just keeps going back to him in everything that we're trying to share. So I just found that really interesting. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about Russian psychologist I.P. Pavlov. So he stumbled upon this classical conditioning deal by accident. So in his research on the digestive systems of dogs, he noticed a subtle change in dogs' responses to food over time. Do you guys remember learning about this in school? This is like one of the few things that I feel like Stacy and I go ahead. Tell me what you said.
When I was reading this, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the only thing I remember from science. Literally. And I think it probably was because it had to do with dogs.
Totally.
And I was probably like, ooh, puppies.
Yeah. So the other day, the only reason I'm talking about Pavlov to my 12-year-old was because we were watching the show Survivor, and she mentioned, this was several seasons ago, and she had mentioned something about having a Pavlov's response to yelling men at her because she had experienced verbal abuse as a child. And so Kobe was like, what does that mean? So I was explaining it to her. So, okay, here we go. So initially the dogs in this experiment would only salivate when food was presented. And over time, they began salivating slightly before the food arrived. And then when they heard the sound of the approaching food carts, Pavlov then conducted an experiment. He rang a bell shortly before presenting food to the dogs. In the beginning, the dogs did not react to the bells. Eventually, though, just hearing the bell caused the dogs to salivate. So the dogs associated the bells with being fed.
Breaking news tonight coming out, Channel 7 News. I mean, give me a break. It's the bell.
Sorry. It was a really good insertion. High five. Go team. Okay. So before conditioning, the bell was a neutral stimulus, and that it did not trigger a response in the dogs. However, after repeatedly ringing the bell before bringing the food, an unconditioned stimulus, hearing the bell became a conditioned stimulus. Tracking?
Yeah.
Making sense? Okay. So the conditional stimulus could then trigger the dogs to salivate involuntarily. This reaction to the conditioned stimulus is conditioned response. So in humans, learning the associations between aversive events and the environmental stimuli that predict such events is an essential survival skill. The fear conditioning paradigm is the epitome of this form of associative learning.
Just got chills from my head to my toe. So question. If we know these types of conditionings to be true and actually quite easy to perform, what would stop elite, evil, control-hungry governments from performing this on its citizens using the power of social media?
Well, let me answer that for you. Nothing.
In fact, I've been saying this for years. One of the last people that I knew to enter Facebook I thought to myself, this is like a social experiment. So what they did was they experimented with the social media platforms to see how quickly misinformation could be spread, how quickly propaganda could be pushed, how much fear they could push to control people. And then they simply just applied Pavlov's theory to the entire country, into the entire world. It wasn't like it was just the US.
Right.
So do you guys see a pattern here? I mean, can you recognize this stuff when it's happening? Because to me, I've become this person that and it's something that I pray about a lot. It's like, I feel like my empathy is so much lower than it used to be, because as soon as I hear, see, I've done the opposite. I'm so conditioned to not believe what the public, that what the media says, immediately it comes out, I go, nope. So it's like, I don't know that that's any better, because at some point, I think we're going to reach this place where it's like the boy that cried wolf. So you're not going to believe anything. But then when something really serious does happen, and I've even said this, like, what if they come and they push out another bioweapon, and this time this one really is terrible. Like, you maybe only have a 50% of living through this one, and nobody listens.
Yeah. Scary.
I'm going to back up to what we were saying earlier, where it said that it was conditioning people to prepare them for war. So how quickly that narrative of us, when they realized they didn't have the COVID thing anymore, now let's shift into a different type of fear. And that different type of fear is war. But that's also coupled with supply shortages, food shortages, high gas prices, inflation. These are all things that produce a conditioned response in the human race. So here is my suggestion to you, because how do you live in this space and in this world where all this is taking place? You have to be really intentional about where you spend your time. And my suggestion, you don't have to take it or leave it, but as of what I've been doing lately, is I only allow myself one day to kind of check in with the news, like what's going on, because I don't want to be stupid and have just my head in the sand and not have any idea of what's going on, or pretending to go on, however you want to look at it. I allow myself one day to just kind of get caught up and go, okay, all right. And then I go right back into choosing joy and the word, and just being with Jesus and being kind of isolated from what's going on in the world. And what I'm finding is happening is that every time I come to that one day and I start listening, my mood goes from here to here. And you can see it when you're really limiting your amount.
When you allow your mind to listen to all of that negative, or even like we're saying, sometimes we don't even know, is this true? Is this not true? Most of the time I'm going with not true if it's at the forefront of what we're talking about. But even if it is not true, it sucks to hear it. Like the other day when you're hearing Joe Biden talk about food shortages, like, what does that do to the average American person? That sends you into fight or flight. It makes you freak out, and you immediately go to the worst place possible. My children are starving. I can't feed them. We're going to freeze to death, or we're going to die because it's too hot and I can't feed my family and the world is ending. Well, that's right where they want you to be. They want you to live in fear, because what you will then do is you will turn to this corrupt elite government, and you will do whatever you can to believe that you are safe and that you don't have to be afraid. So if they tell you, in order to be safe, in order to have a more controlled household or environment, these are the things that you need to do. When you hear that people like George Bush, Bill Clinton, Obama, Biden are all over here going, oh, poor Ukraine, let's pray for Ukraine. I'm like, that is why my husband makes comments like, I'm Team Putin. It's simply because when you have this group of people that you know are evil to their core and they're pushing something, you want to walk away and say, no, I'm not having anything to do with this. Once again, I'm not saying like, yes, we're Vladimir Putin fans over here.
No.
The
But
point
why not pray for both?
yes,
Why can't we pray for Russia and for Ukraine, especially
Yes.
the people there?
the
Because
people.
but there's none of that. Just screw you, Russia. I mean, yeah.
Yes, that's what it is. And I mean, you look at like this has happened over history. What happened to the Jews, which we are also trying to erase, to act like the Holocaust never happened. I'm like baffled at people that are like, that never happened. I'm like, literally, you're hearing people say that that never happened.
Yeah.
And so when people talk about, you know, Nazis, this and that, it's like the irony that Donald Trump was called a Nazi. It just like, it kills me inside. I'm like, the man who was the most like pro democratic, like constitutional American president that was for the American people is being labeled as a Nazi dictator. And I'm like, cue the tyrants as they walk in over here, like, you're the dictator. I'm like,
yeah.
really? Really? And that's where I feel like the media has done such a good job of manipulating and swaying and making people live in fear and pointing them to all of these lies because they want it's smoke and mirrors. They want you to see all of this. But like you said earlier, what's the man doing behind the curtain, pulling the puppet strings to make you think and feel a certain way? And you're having this Pavlov's dog response. That conditioning that's taking place. So the whole point of why we're talking about this, and this probably will not be the last time we talk about this, because it's so important for us to drive home the fact that media is a mess. You cannot believe the things that you are seeing. You cannot believe the things that you are hearing. Even if you literally are seeing and hearing them with your own eyes, we mentioned that on a previous podcast, like you have to challenge and question everything. And the best place to go back to is the Word of God. It's the only stinking piece of truth that we have to be able to measure everything else up to.
Amen. I heard something today and I want to share it. And it goes back to the Word and why it's so important. The very way that we're listening to this, making this, recording this, doing all the things that we do to get this podcast out. Computers have a script. In order to run or do anything, they have to have a coding. It's called a script. Okay. The same way that the computers cannot run properly without the correct script, neither can humans. And the human script is the Word of God. It is what makes us understand how to do things, how to go through life. And if we're going through life without the script, many of us are lost. Many of us are anxious, scared, hopeless, fearful, because we are not following the script that was given to us to properly function. So if you're dealing with any of these things,
ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, check the script. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, yeah. That's good. You heard that today. It's just so funny to me how like the way that these podcasts have come together, friends, like it's totally the Lord. Like everything that gets talked about, there's like this drive behind it. And sometimes we just go, well, let's talk about this. And we'll just trust that the Lord is going to direct us accordingly.
Yeah, exactly. We don't always have a script. Sometimes, unless we're doing like a deeper teaching, but we never stick to it.
Nope.
The whole point of this is recognize the narrative shift when things are changing. You know, you don't go from a year of hearing about COVID shoved down your throat. Now here, and I'm going to give you an example of this. I go visit my parents about every 4 to 5 weeks. I was down there 5 weeks ago. Everything, and I don't have news. So unless I go there, I don't hear it. Everything 24/7 was COVID. I'm gonna die, gonna do this, gonna do get your booster 17 times. That's how I really feel. Sorry.
I think that's how many of us feel.
Then I go back 4 weeks
recently.
later. Yep. Just there. Not a single word.
Nothing. Mm-hmm.
Nothing. Absolutely, positively nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It
Oh,
was-
there's a billboard sign from Orland to Willows that says like whatever your percentage chance of dying is if you don't get the you know what.
Mhm.
And what's funny is like 30 minutes north, there's another percentage sign, two totally different numbers. I'm like, let's just, throw out random statistics just because we can.
Mhm.
And they're not real. It's all fake.
Yeah.
And that sign, though, was taken down last week.
Oh.
Isn't that interesting? Because
Hey, COVID's
that's-
over.
Yeah, COVID's over.
Don't be shocked if it gets to a point, and I said this a year ago, but now the narrative is shifting and I can see where it's heading, but
Mhm.
be prepared. Just be prepared, like stay with the script, follow what God tells you on your heart, make some preparations if it makes you feel better. But I can see where we're headed. And although they have lightened and lessened the COVID restrictions, smoke and mirrors.
Mhm.
Now we're getting a food shortage.
Mhm.
Do you see where I'm going with this? You cannot buy or sell or get your food without the vaccine.
Mhm.
So just keep it in mind. Doesn't mean that it won't happen, but it is biblical. And
Mhm.
if that is where we're headed, it's right in line.
Don't be shocked.
Show me your vaccine card, and you can get in and get your 2 loaves of bread for the week. I'm hard
So
to see it.
as your heart might have been feeling that tug over the last year or two to, like Stacy and I said, just live off the grid, start a compound, make friends with your neighbors so that you can go back to the trade system. It's not a terrible idea for so
Mhm.
many reasons. Like, I actually look at this way of life and I think what beauty there is in simplicity when you are ultimately putting the Lord at the forefront of your decisions and you are actually trying to make connections and have community to live your life the way that you are hoping and wanting to live your life. And Stacy and I talk about this all the time. The two things we're supposed to be doing are to glorify God and to go and make disciples. Glorifying God can be done in any way, shape, or form, no matter what you are doing. Buying your groceries, going to the gas station, picking up a friend from wherever location that they need a ride from. You can be doing all of this in a way that pleases the Lord because you get to choose how you respond to your circumstances and you get to choose joy.
Mhm.
Is it fun paying $6 for gas a gallon? No. But you know what? The enemy isn't going to steal my joy. He can go pound salt and suck an egg. I'm real sick of this guy. So sometimes it just comes out. I can't help it.
Hey, there's a reason he's being thrown into the lake of fire.
Dude,
So ultimately, this was a dumpster fire. And so there's maybe not so much you can take away other than, as we will always point you back to the script and
Mhm.
just be aware of your surroundings, be intentional of where you're spending your time, and try not to worry because
Mhm.
that's what they want. We just went
That's
through
what
the
they
whole
want.
thing. They want you to
Mhm.
worry so that you're going to look to them for the answer. So that's why it's so important to find the things in your life that actually bring you joy, because we cannot control the narrative, but we can control how we react to it.
Mhm.
You know what? We don't have a resource for you today. We just want you to go join the Joy Revival so we can choose joy together, because
Yes.
we need one another. That's it. We need one another. And you can check out
Seriously.
all the free resources that are on there, which are a
Mhm.
ton.
There's tons. You just need to go to the main page. And those are free for everybody.
Mhm.
And the Joy Revival continues to be something that like Stacy and I, it just grows inside of us like daily. We just continue to feel like this is what the Lord wants us to be doing. And we want you to be a part of this community. I think what we are hoping from this is that you can find your place within the Joy Revival, that you can find how the Lord can use you to minister to other people.
Mhm.
And each one of us has been assigned a task. Each one of us has specific giftings, and this comes from the Lord. And so I would have told you, not until recently did I feel like I really, really knew what the Lord wanted for me. I felt like my job while I was here was to raise my children, to point them to Jesus, and to continue to grow in my faith and to partner with my husband as we move through life together. That was my assignment. And as time has gone on, I have just continued to feel like the Lord is like, those things and this.
Mm.
This is what you're supposed to be doing. And so we're looking for more community members. Another thing I'm going to mention, Stacy's probably like, what are you doing?
Not on the script.
It's not on the script. We are faithfully praying that as this community grows, we need community leaders, because the hope and the prayer is that it gets to be too big to where we can't do all the things for all the people. And so maybe you are supposed to be a part of this community because you're supposed to help lead this community. And if you're feeling like that still small voice, like pressing on your heart, like, oh gosh, darn it, God, why? I don't need to do another thing. Did I want to do the podcast? No. Do I show up every week and say things that, like, feed him and lay him? Yeah, I do. Here we are. And I'm continuing to trust the Lord that he's going to use us in this space. And I believe that he can use you in this space as well. So
That's
pray
good
about
stuff.
it.
I approve that message.
Go team.
And with that, we'd like to remind you that through the good, the bad, and the dumpster fires,
You can still choose joy.
yes, there's blood-curdling screaming coming from Megan's eyes. They are not choosing joy.
It's the cats.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
the cats